Um, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session on pragmatic AI and machine learning to enhance your sales and marketing effectiveness. Uh, for purposes of today, we're going to kind of walk through a brief introduction of the Alexander Group and Revology and kind of the panelists you have on the line today. Then we'll jump into some specific examples as well as some real life use cases of where we see AI and machine learning being applicable today. So just as background before we dive too far into the materials, we want to just provide an overview of who we are at the Alexander Group. So the Alexander Group is a management consulting firm. We've been around for 40 plus years, worked with 3,000 plus clients on individual engagements. Over 50% of the Fortune 2,000 companies have worked with us. And we have over 6,500 companies in our research and community that we interact with on a yearly basis. So in terms of what we do, our business is made up of three main parts. One is our management consulting practice, kind of the core day-to-day of what we do here, working with clients to solve real life business problems as it relates to sales, marketing, and service go-to-market. We also have an arm that does research, and another arm that looks at and builds a community where we can crowdsource information of what other companies are doing, kind of what's hot in the market today. Our organization is broken up into key industry practices and verticals. We have 8 practices covering industries such as healthcare, business services, and manufacturing, among others, where we'll do specific consulting work. In addition, our research is broken down by those same industry practices. So I'm going to pass it over to Armin, who's going to kind of walk through Revology, and then we can kind of jump back to the overall process for today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. So quick background on Revology. We're a specialized revenue growth analytics firm. And we were founded by former corporate executives. We're former leaders in domain functions in advanced revenue growth management and data science. And so I like to think that this unique combination of sort of practical industry experience and deep technical expertise allows us to offer fairly advanced revenue growth management solutions that are tailored to individual businesses, leveraging AI and ML. And most people ask me, what is revenue growth analytics? You see that kind of as the first question. People have heard about revenue growth management. Revenue growth analytics is all about unlocking your profitable growth potential using your data. We apply AI and ML to identify and leverage opportunities across pricing, sales, and marketing, which is our 3 key practice areas. Most of our projects are call it advanced pricing, revenue growth management solutions, followed by sales and marketing, AI, ML enablement, and some commercial analytics transformation for mostly upper end of mid-market firms. Where we collaborated with the Alexander Group, we essentially combined their strengths and expertise in sales and marketing data science with our expertise in actually operationalizing these capabilities through AI, ML ops. So we build these capabilities in the systems that companies use to generate real-time insights and real-time actions for sales and marketing teams.
Awesome. So in terms of who all is on this call and kind of the voices that you guys will hear from today, I'm going to do a quick intro of myself, and then I'll pass it to Kevin and Lucas, and then Armin and Rudy to do introductions of themselves. But my name is Daniel Kravitz. I am a principal at the Alexander Group. I work across our business services and technology practice and do a lot of work in the data science, machine learning segment that we've stood up there. So I'm going to pass it to Kevin. He can give a brief intro, and then over to Lucas.
Well, good day, everyone. Thanks for joining. Appreciate the time with us today. Kevin Savage, also principal at the firm. I focus on marketing, digital product, go-to-market strategy across our industry verticals. So AI and machine learning is front and center to a lot of those go-to-market transformations. So look forward to sharing some of the use cases and practices from what we see with clients with the group today. Lucas?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lucas. I'm AGI's lead data scientist. And like Kevin, I'm working across both sales and marketing and across all of AGI's verticals to develop robust statistical models to deal with practical business challenges. We're going to be walking through a couple of them today. And I can pass it over to Armin and Rudy.
Yeah, I'm Armin Kakash. I'm the founder of Revology Analytics. Rudy?
Hi, I'm Rudy Argovic. I have a background of about 2 decades plus experience in AI and machine learning, starting out with an academic background and then helping various types of companies make AI actionable. I lead the AI practice within AI and machine learning practice within Revology.
Awesome. So kind of just moving on to the blueprint for today's discussion. There are really 5 top areas that we're going to go through. We're going to start with really an overall background on kind of what the objectives are and provide an intro to AI and machine learning use cases. Then we're going to jump into 2 specific use cases, one around opportunity modeling, and then the second around marketing attribution. We'll close out with some common challenges that organizations face, and then we'll wrap with areas and focus kind of what to take away from today's call. So whether that's focus areas, what you should be looking for within your organization, or even kind of how we can help from a AGI perspective. So in terms of background, today's real goal is to learn how we can maximize your data and how you as companies and clients can do that internally. So as Gen AI has, gotten all the buzz recently, really over the last 2 years, machine learning has been around for a really long time. And kind of when we're talking about AI or kind of the automation stack, we kind of break it into 3 areas. One is around automation, the second machine learning, and the third is generative AI. So automation being technologies that perform tasks according to a set algorithm, machine learning being more along the lines of self-training algorithms that look for patterns and help predict expected outcomes. And then generative AI is really artificial neural networks that process, transform, and generate content using natural language processing. So machine learning's been around for a long time. A lot of organizations have been investing in ways to best utilize that. You can kind of see the areas that, based on a survey that we ran, that organizations have been investing in leveraging it. It's around sales forecasting, lead scoring, qualification, as well as pricing. Well, generative AI, while it may be getting a lot of the buzz, really the big use cases of where it's being used and invested in today is going to be around marketing content, chat, AI bots. Those are areas that kind of we see as kind of the initial frontiers there. So kind of with that, I'll kind of pass it over to Armin, who can kind of talk about some of these AI machine learning applications across the customer journey. And then we'll kind of go through some of the initial use cases and examples that we've seen.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I thought the prior slide was really good. I just want to touch base on kind of the distinction broadly about kind of ML versus AI. So think about, whereas AI is sort of your, CMO/marketing organization, right? It encompasses a wide range of sort of interconnected activities, right? Think of ML as like your, marketing specialist that does sort of a specific task. But the way we think about sort of applying advanced machine learning, and typically we talk about advanced machine learning or very use case based AI to the customer journey, we think about these sort of distinct areas. And by the way, you can apply all of these to both B2C and B2B organizations alike, right? This is not just B2C, but certainly awareness is kind of the first step, right? So foundational things like using customer data enrichment and segmentation and targeting your audiences to kind of reach them effectively. Optimizing your marketing spend, right? And we'll talk about later in the slides, but there's still a heavy portion of organizations that cannot quite quantify the impact of the marketing spend, right? So think like marketing mix modeling and attribution modeling are really important. On the interest and research side, right? So things like lead scoring and nurturing to really focus on high potential prospects in the organization. These are all crucial things. Customer journey analysis, again, sort of a big pain point for many organizations, and not just paying attention to the customer journey for kind of marketing efforts, but sales efforts and customer service and product reviews from customers, just getting a holistic idea of what that customer journey looks like and being able to optimize that customer journey is incredibly important, right? On the evaluation side, right? So things like promotion effectiveness and conversion optimization are really, really critical capabilities for companies. And again, it's also really critical for B2B companies. Acquisition, that's an obvious one, right? So lookalike modeling and targeted prospecting. Renewal and growth, this doesn't get talked about too often. And in fact, if you look at the prior slide, we talked about kind of things like churn prediction and retention analysis being sort of used 1 out of 5 companies. But this is all about implementing sort of what we call the next best action for the sales team, right? So, proactive churn prediction and upselling, cross-sell optimization, but being able to serve up these insights in the hands of the decision makers who are actually interacting with the salespeople to just really accelerate and augment their efforts and drive more value and increase customer lifetime value for the organization. Daniel, do you mind going to the next slide? Yeah, so this is another sort of really really important slide. So as you think about all these capabilities that we just talked about in the customer journey, and you sort of want to implement all these kind of AI ML augmented capabilities for your organization, right? It can quickly become sort of this giant digital transformation 2.0 type initiative. So it's really, really important to actually prioritize. And so the way we think about these things is sort of 3 levers, right? First priority is kind of your foundational capabilities. Start by doing things like an enriched data environment and gaining a fundamental understanding of what are your expansion and your prospect opportunities for your organization. So you'll notice things like customer data enrichment, segmentation, targeting, market mix modeling, upsell, cross-sell optimization as being those foundational sort of levers that you need to build capabilities for, right? And you can do these internally within your own systems, or you can use turnkey tools. These are sort of universal and sort of set the stage for your sales and marketing efforts. On the kind of next step level down, your second priority, you focus on applications that are still kind of universal and widely applicable, but a little bit more advanced. So things like promotion effectiveness and optimization, right? Customer journey analysis, right? That's actually not easy to do for most organizations, but it's really impactful. And actually optimizing the customer journey, optimizing engagements, right? Next best action recommendations, right? That's also kind of a secondary priority. And the same thing with churn prediction, incredibly important to kind of stand up to companies, but sort of a next layer to the foundational capabilities. And so you'll see some other key capabilities that are still important, but they're fairly, sort of model specific. They're nice to have in some organizations. So things like referral program optimization that you see on the screen, not relevant for some companies, right? Same thing with sentiment analysis, may or may not be relevant for certain industries. If you watch this webinar either right now or later on, we're happy to answer any of the questions on these use cases. Obviously, we'll focus on kind of these first priorities today because they're the most universal and the most impactful. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna walk the group today through kind of our first practical use case, and Lucas is going to partner with me on some of this content as we get a little bit further in. But let me set the stage for the audience today around what we call opportunity modeling. So what is an opportunity model? In our words, it's a predictive model that helps you understand in a B2B environment in particular, what's your account level spend potential, and how do you actually bring your data sources together to realize where you have coverage in the market today? Where do you have what we might call white space or greenfield opportunity? Where do you have expansion opportunity? Where do you have prospective opportunity and the propensity within a market or a customer base to convert? And then how do you bring that and elevate it up to understand where your opportunity lies relative to the actual market size? And we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. And so the way that we typically will build out an opportunity model over time with clients, and every client has a different bespoke need, of course, right? And it has a different set of data, but some common data sources we see are around CRM data or pipeline data, to some degree, even behavioral data or engagement data, which we might call marketing engagement data. But we're usually combining that with firmographic or technographic data. And what spits out of that opportunity model are a couple different things, right? In terms of how you think about using that opportunity model. So you might be a chief revenue officer and you're just really trying to understand like where are your growth opportunities for your sales team, or you're a marketing leader and you're trying to understand like, how do I actually understand the market and segment the market so I know where to prioritize my campaign efforts with my sales team members? Or how do I make sure that my sales teams are actually properly allocated to the right opportunity in the marketplace relative to their capacity, right? You could look at marketing mix modeling, which we're going to talk about in a little bit later, in terms of like, how do you optimize the kind of way that you use channels to reach a customer base, convert a customer base. And I think most, but also lastly, probably a common thing that we see as important is, are you putting your investments relative to where you have growth opportunity, and are you really pointed your go-to-market teams in that area? So that's what we call an opportunity model. So it's less of an analytical exercise and just a predictive model. It's also a go-to-market strategy. So think of this as the analytics, the insights, the capability to actually inform how you operate as a company as well. So we're going to go into detail on a use case here around an opportunity model for a client. And let's dig in. So take us in the next slide here, Daniel. So a couple things that to hit on first, though, that we get as common questions from clients. So, for those that aren't familiar with all these fun acronyms on the material here, so TAM, total addressable market, or total market potential, that's something that we get from clients all the time, where they say, well, you know what, my TAM is actually $15 billion. And it's like, well, that's not really what you can execute on. So what the opportunity model focuses on is that, right? Which is, how do you understand the full size of the market, but actually the serviceable portion of it that you can have the propensity to win in and go obtain a share of that market, right? So we call that the propensity, and then what we call the SOM, the serviceable obtainable market. And so what we're trying to do in the opportunity model is break that down so you have the right level of opportunity identification in a very actionable form. So take us into the next slide. Here's an example, okay? So when we actually can get down into that serviceable attainable market, what comes out of it is something like, where are your account level expansion opportunities? Where do you have the propensity to kind of grow within an account? And then how do you actually couple that with visualization, the interactivity to kind of drill down and understand, where that opportunity lies? So this is more the visualization side of the output. What I'm going to walk through is an approach, and I'm going to hand it over to Lucas, and he's going to get under the hood and share some of the kind of underlying outputs that we'll typically see with clients. But this is kind of a sample project to kind of set the stage. We had a client who said, look, we need to understand three things. One is, where do we have the opportunity to expand? Where do we have the propensity to expand? And then where do we have the opportunity to prospect and actually win kind of net new business? And so the way we've approached that historically, and everybody has kind of a different approach, but we found this to be kind of a good tried and true model here, is in the first one is really looking at defining the variables that need to inform the expansion opportunity. So that's bringing in things like firmographic, technographic data. So think about like IT spend or IT, revenue size, things along those lines, where we're taking different industries and we're clustering them and then running regression around that to understand, where does the opportunity lie for expansion in those industries, kind of across those cohorts or those clusters, okay? So that's kind of finding opportunity in that existing install base. Second, running concurrent with that is really using different variables to weight in the regression analysis to build a different level of scoring and propensity by product area, by market segment, by account, to really understand, if you don't have opportunity today, where should you have expansion propensity based on different attributes. And so that can be what we call business fit or different other variable criteria around technographics, firmographics, behavioral things along those lines. On the third area here is where we're really bringing together all the firmographic, technographic variables to understand, do you have a new prospect universe that you should be tapping into that you're not today? And we call that more of a prospective and propensity model. You've got to do both is the reality, but they take different inputs and different variables that need different types of regression. And Lucas is going to walk us through some pretty great examples of how we've done that.
Yeah, and if we could stay quickly on this slide here too, Daniel, I think
Yep.
one important thing to note is that we're doing all of this at the account level and at the product level. So you'll get a perspective on upsell and cross-sell potential within an account by your different product lines. And that becomes very relevant for sales targeting and for marketing planning, because you may be highly penetrated in an account in one of your products, but there's a large incremental opportunity in one that you haven't explored yet. And that can be a great output for any of the use cases that we have. Daniel, looks like you're going to add something.
Yeah, I was just going to say kind of one other thing just to note is that we've seen this be very successful is when we've looked at expansion opportunity and propensity almost upfront and use the results of that analysis to test the overall algorithm, test the overall model, and be able to pressure test the results as a means to influence kind of how the model is going to work with prospects, where we might have less depth of knowledge either on a product level or an account level. So really using kind of steps 1 and 2 or process 1 and 2 to refine and get everything ready to go before you go and look at number 3. So that's all I was going to add. So back to you, Lucas.
That's a perfect transition to the next slide. And you'll see on this next one that this is a list of the variables that we collected and assessed for this client that had an internal source. And so to Daniel's point earlier, we have a lot more intelligence about current customers. About their engagement with your sales teams, with your marketing teams. It's more difficult with prospects, and that's why we like to tune the customer-centric model first. We incorporated here, you'll see a lot of variables that we compute based on standard CRM or standard marketing sources, or from this, the CS organization. We've also included a lot of variables that were sourced from third-party providers. So firmographic variables like the number of employees in an account. Are they using Azure or GCP is something that we can source as well from a technology standpoint. So we incorporate those different sources of data and then do testing to see if there's any relationship between that and predicting future revenue or future likelihood to buy. And that can generate insights in itself. These are areas where, we have a large amount of days since the last renewal. We maybe want to set up a CS flag. That's obviously a fairly standard one, but there can be insights gleaned from just this variable selection process on what metrics you want to track for your leadership teams. That is definitely part of this engagement, but it also is a direct input into some of the opportunity and propensity outputs that we're going to be showing. And so, Daniel, if we can go to the next slide here. You'll see that we're moving, there it is. Because we're doing all this modeling at the customer account level, at the child account level, so to speak, in a standard hierarchy definition, we can roll up all of our outputs to different product lines, to different geographies. We could also do it to current sales territories. So there's a lot of intelligence that can be gleaned just from high level outputs. For instance, in this client, we had a lot of expansion opportunity in America or in the Americas, but we did have very high propensity in APAC, which wasn't a historical area of strength. And so this, hints at the opportunity to execute some plays within APAC and gives the sales teams in that region some key targets to go after for different product lines. That combination of propensity and opportunity. So you'll see here on this left side that the dark blue bars are adjusted by propensity, with the light blue bars being net to the total opportunity. There are certainly use cases for both, right? There are ways that marketing can nurture an account to increase the propensity of them to buy. at the account level, whether through ABM analytics, doing targeted campaigns that can help influence the ability of that account to buy and actualize their total opportunity. But combining the total SAM and the propensity allows you to have a realistic short-term experience of where your customer stack is going and how sales and marketing can go and do some short-term targeting. Daniel, looks like you were going to maybe add something there.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, having this level of data allows sales organizations, specifically to better plan and maybe even better resource. So if we know we have high propensity as well as kind of, more opportunity or more that we think we're going to close, it could have implications on how many resources we need in a specific market. It could have implications on how we would assign accounts from a territory standpoint, as well as how we want to set goals, as a means that we wouldn't want to, have major overpayment in one region versus another one, while still driving the optimal level of productivity.
Yeah. To Daniel's point, beyond just sales targeting, there are certainly use cases in helping inform quota setting, helping inform territories, helping inform marketing campaigns. So it is pretty broad ranging when there's a solid understanding of where opportunity sits. This, for this client, is the current customer stack with their current product stack as well. We then fit the model on, we only have intelligence on prospects, usually on firmographics or technographics, things that we can find online, like what technologies they're using for their tech stack or their company annual revenue. Once we apply the model, both propensity and opportunity there, and we can go to the next slide here, we get a good understanding of what we call a targeting matrix. And so to orient everybody to the slide here, the top right of the slide is going to be high opportunity, so a lot of SAM dollars, and high propensity, high likelihood to actually actualize those dollars. That's a great target group to have for both sales and marketing if you want to put them into segmentation, if you want to run plays against those accounts. It's also interesting to see when you have groups that are very high opportunity, so that top row, but have lower propensity. These are areas for maybe longer term nurturing. They may have short term low propensity because they're not in a buying cycle right now for whatever product is being offered or products are being offered. And similarly, there's high propensity accounts that have medium or low opportunity. These accounts are also interesting from a quick execution standpoint. They're very likely to buy at a lower rate. That's revenue that can potentially be booked quickly and hopefully easily. Applying this to a pretty broad ranging prospect universe, and this one in this client's case was almost 50 times their customer universe, helps actually action that really large customer universe that's too big to cover right now. It helps give that 257 accounts that are in that top bucket with 90th percentile plus prospects in both respects are great targets that you're basically able to pick out of this really large haystack and run both analytics to see sales performance and marketing performance, but also to just put them into the hands of a very capable seller. And then we can transition to the next slide here and show a little bit of how this model actually works. So part of what we like to hand over is this can be a really big data set, especially if you have a lot of customers and a lot of products and potentially a lot of prospects as well. This data is at the child account level and at the product level. And so we like to make dashboards that help elucidate where that opportunity sits, geographically, product-wise, industry-oriented, and even within specific accounts, which might be most useful for sales leadership and for even first-line sales managers to help direct their team. We can summarize all this data, within each account. We can have the product breakouts below it and show the incremental opportunity for net new products that will be cross sells, incremental opportunity for current upsells, for current customers where there's an upsell, and areas where customers are capped. They buy a lot today, and the model is predicting that they're not going to buy a lot in the future, either from a total opportunity perspective or when you consider the propensity adjusted opportunity. And so what we try to do is make it accessible to leadership and to understand, where they can place their bets across their organization. It's also important when we hand this over that we make sure that the granularity of the model is accessible to both leadership and depending on how integrated it is through your organization, through the sales and marketing organization. And that's something that we really focus on at the end of engagements to make sure that the integration takes place. We could then flow to the last section here within opportunity modeling. Is we want to understand what factors are going to drive both opportunity and propensity. And this becomes a great output, particularly when structuring sales plays and marketing campaigns. We do this typically by product and sometimes by industry, if industries are specific enough within clients. For this client, for product A, we identified with some of this machine learning output that manufacturing, telecom, and software are really a good target grouping of industries. In their previous, understanding of this, software was not something that was a target, and it became an area where, maybe we should develop sales plays against how to sell product A to a software company, or develop a marketing campaign that's specifically target software for product A. This, is a great output that can help, we tag customers and prospects to each of these end groupings with rankings. So that way sales and marketing can use it. But we also have another slide next that really deals with operationalizing these, because it's a lot of data. It's a lot of data to, be able to integrate into your side and do actionable sales things with. Here's a couple of ideas that we see commonly in the market. In that last example, the industry-specific campaigns is a great output from this machine learning output. We've identified an industry grouping that typically is associated with large companies that have really high expansion potential and relatively high propensity. That's an area to invest resources in from a campaign's perspective. For product B, it's much more size-oriented and potential for just product-based marketing or tracking of the size cohorts. How are you doing with really large companies within that product group? And if you're not doing well, you can evaluate where strategies are maybe faltering. In the last group, the highest expansion potential grouping, that's also very high propensity, was concentrated into a list of 55 accounts. Those are great candidates for account-based marketing, where you can structure specific things to those accounts to help really convert those expansion dollars and potentially outperform the modeled output of expansion potential and propensity. And so these are just some ideas of how to operationalize these ideal customer profiles. There are, of course, other things that you can do with this data that we'll recommend on a client-by-client basis. Daniel, Kevin, anything else to add on these operationalizations or on opportunity modeling in general? Great.
I think you hit on the great points, Lucas.
Great. So with that, I think, Armin, we can hand it over to you and Rudy for the walkthrough of some of the marketing attribution modeling.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so we'll talk about marketing analytics, but yeah, I think these slides were really good, Lucas. And I think for those of you that are sort of thought about AI or have had discussions in your organizations about standing up kind of AI capabilities, like many people talk about kind of doing AI for AI's sake because it's in vogue, but like what Lucas presented was some really kind of pragmatic, tactical machine learning use cases that actually add real quantifiable value to the organization. So I thought it was excellent. Let's talk about marketing analytics real quick. We do sort of this annual survey of key commercial leaders. Last year, I think we have 150 respondents or so. Companies ranging from sort of 50, 100 million all the way to $1 or $2 billion. But questions that we asked was fundamental question, right? Are your sales, marketing, and finance teams aware of the marketing spend ROI, right? Do they know what the return on the investment is by channel, medium, by campaign, but at least by channel? And so the responses were actually quite alarming, right? Understanding your ROI is essential for marketing investments, and so the issue is many firms still struggle with that. It's a foundational sort of call it analytics / ML capability when it comes to kind of marketing and sales, but most companies still find it challenging. So if you look at that slide, right, on the industry breakdown, CPG, about 30% of them can actually quantify the impact of their marketing spend. Retail, it's about 40%. Manufacturing is a dismal sort of 15 to 20%, right? And medtech is about 1 out of 4 companies. But overall, if you look at that picture, about 60 to 70% of the companies, they're just not adequately employing marketing analytics. So a lot of the capabilities that Lucas and Kevin have talked about, it sort of remains a significant gap in capabilities and in insights. And for marketing, right, that's incredibly important. Without understanding the impact of your investments, you're sort of shooting in the dark, and you're missing your financial targets. Those companies that do quantify the impact of your marketing investments, typically they use 2 methods. Marketing mix modeling has been around for decades, right? It's sort of experienced like a resurgence, just kind of given the phasing out of third-party cookies, but it's a really kind of good technique to do, once a month or once a quarter, some omni-channel, holistic, long-term view of your marketing effectiveness, right? Now, we use that, and many companies use that in combination with multi-touch attribution, which is much more granular, but that actually quantifies the value of individual customer touch points in the customer journey to sort of help you understand which interactions are actually driving conversions. But when you do these things together, that's really powerful and really helps you optimize your marketing efforts, your marketing assets, customer engagements, etc. One of the ways you can do that is through marketing knowledge graphs, and it's not a sort of a new concept, but it's an incredibly powerful technology that is still largely used in things like fraud detection, et cetera, et cetera. We've been actually using that for sales and marketing optimization efforts, and Rudy, my colleague, will talk about that on the next slide to sort of understand what exactly is knowledge graphs and how do they work for sales and marketing optimization. Rudy, go ahead.
All right. Can we get to the next slide? So there's 2 things I would like to touch upon. One is journey analytics, and one is knowledge graphs. And yeah, as Armi mentioned, these are some really powerful tool if you're trying to apply AI and machine learning to sales and marketing. So well, you can think of a customer journey as a path that you take on a graph. Really, if you think about all the interactions a customer performs, be it within marketing or sales or on the web, so they might look at a website, you might call them, you might have a meeting. You can think of these events as kind of a sequence of things that happen on a path. And so here we have a depiction of, you've kind of broken this down into, well, let's say a company has an e-commerce page, they have a marketing page, they have a marketing department, and then they have a sales department, and then there's some kind of an ERP system. So as they're tracking what they're doing, you can piece that together in terms of, if you're thinking about the nodes here representing activities, and then the arrows are kind of the transitions. So like naturally, if you think about enterprise level data, a lot of it is of this shape. A lot of it is actually in a form of a path, in a form of a journey. So there has been a development since about 2009 or 10 in the space of databases. There's a particular category of databases that has sort of arisen called graph databases, where you're able to capture these kinds of paths natively. And so to be able to traverse them. So in a graph database, you're looking here at an example. So let's suppose we have some marketing data, and in this case, we're looking at marketing channel and in particular, content marketing channel. So we have nodes, which are sort of the circles, and then we have relationships. Could we go back? So within a graph database, this is the representation, and if you go down to a blog and click on a blog, you're going to see, you're able to kind of expand all the different blog posts. And then if you click on a particular blog post, you can see all the activities associated with that blog post. Did somebody read it? Did they view it? Did they click on it? So you kind of have, like this illustrates how you kind of the top level marketing channel tied all the way down to the individual activities. Now, if you go to the next slide, we have here an example of an actual customer journey of how that would be represented in a graph database. I mean, this is zoomed out a little bit, but I can tell you the blue dots here represent the sales portion of the journey. So these are like the sales opportunities out of Salesforce, where an opportunity is generated, it's going through the various stages. So at the end, it's either closed, won or lost. And so in this particular customer journey, there were 3 opportunities tied to that customer. The red nodes represent marketing activities. The yellow nodes represent e-commerce activities, and the orange one represents an actual transaction. Now, this is a simplified picture. This is just to illustrate. In reality, when a customer comes in, these individual departmental interactions are more intertwined. So they might interact with sales, and then they might interact with marketing. But this is just to kind of give you a sense of how a customer journey might be represented in a graph database. Once you have it in this shape, the way multi-touch attribution would be performed is you take every single activity and so the central node here is what we call a journey. And so every single activity is tied to the journey. And then we might have different types of attribution models. There's something like first touch, where you might attribute the entire amount of a transaction to the first event that happened, the first touch. Or a linear model might attribute the amount of the transaction to every single node. And so you don't see it here in this picture very well, but these edges that go out of the journey are different attribution models. So, like you can have linear, you could have anything in there. And so, like this is extremely powerful. Not only can you get multi-touch attribution type of insights out of this, but if you're looking at next best action, if you're trying to understand how is one thing affecting something else, this is really powerful for that. And especially in a setup where you have marketing and sales, where the 2 departments frequently don't understand what the other one is doing or are not able to see that. And so next to the graph here, you see kind of how the insights would typically be delivered, which is through a report. So we've got various types of multi-touch attribution type of insights. Like this is not really visible. It's kind of too small, but it would be kind of like the question typically with multi-touch attribution is like which of these touch points is adding the most value. But because you have all of this data here, you can also go from the micro level to the macro level, and you can ask the same question on like the marketing channel level or on the blog level. So you've got a lot of flexibility. So Armin, I'll give it back to you.
Good, thanks, Rudy. Let me just, in the interest of time, let me just kind of quickly cover the next slide. So let's talk about a real example. This was a global client that only employed last touch attribution to understand the marketing impact, which of course we know is sort of suboptimal. So what have we done? We've done a couple of things. We built a refreshable marketing mix model that evaluated omni-channel marketing effectiveness, which was more long-term, so it kind of had an annual or quarterly view of marketing impact. But more importantly, we actually complemented that with a very granular marketing analytics dashboard that was built upon the knowledge graphs that Rudy talked about, right? And again, what we're able to do is connect all digital touch points, including emails, website visits, ad responses, etc., or ad views, with offline channels, so direct marketing, to actually visualize a lot of these customer journeys. And that enabled us to, one, answer a host of questions about the customer journeys, which, what are the most effective marketing assets for these customer segments? What is the most profitable customer journey for consumers under the age of 55? So all sorts of questions that you can think of about your customers, customer engagements, customer behaviors. You can ask it from the knowledge graph. You can actually get the insights within minutes, as opposed to it being sort of a 1 or 2 week exercise. And then lastly, with the knowledge graphs enabled, like Rudy talked about, is the actual multi-touch attribution, be it linear, be it first touch, last touch, or some kind of algorithmic method. they were actually stored as edges. They call them edges, the connecting line between the customer and the various campaigns. And so we were able to quickly answer what are the most effective combinations that drive the greatest lift, the greatest profitability, et cetera, in a very, very seamless fashion. This is an incredibly powerful technology that I encourage everybody to check out. I'll turn it back to Rudy. Maybe we can kind of cap it off before Daniel or Kevin closes us out. And let's talk about the challenges as we sort of think about implementing a lot of the capabilities that Lucas talked about, implementing them at scale, real time, et cetera, for organizations. Rudy, go ahead.
So I'd say, in my experience, one of the biggest challenges has been sort of a misconception about this field by a lot of the stakeholders, because we have a problem in mind that we want to address, be it multi-touch attribution, be it helping out, it could be propensity modeling. They'll have the problem in mind, and a lot of the times they'll have an expectation, we'll bring a data scientist, they will solve this for us, and we're good. But it's really so one of the challenges is first of all understanding and realizing that in order to get value in production, in order to operationalize models and data science work, there is quite a bit of more work that is involved. That's not necessarily the data scientist or AI engineer coming up with the models, but it's just how does that model that was created end up going and ends up being deployed in a stable fashion, in a fashion that scales, and especially if we're talking about sales and marketing, these guys may not have the technical expertise to go through that. So there is an area which is called MLOps or AI ops now, which kind of deals with this. So assuming we had data scientists, they did their work, they came up with a model, looks great, and now we want to leverage it. So that's kind of where MLOps comes into play. I mean, portions of this, you'll see things like data collection and preparation, model development and training. Well, the data scientists will have already done some of that, but we're talking here about taking those data pipelines and creating production level data pipelines that will take the data, that will scale, that will be robust. Usually a data scientist, they will be more on the science end of things. They will not be engineers that are, familiar with frameworks like Kubernetes, Docker, and whatnot. That it's kind of like they're not the engineer type, and this is also not typically your typical software engineers that will know all of this. So this is literally kind of a skill by itself now. So when we're talking about these things, it's really at a production level. Model needs to be trained, but it's like you got the model, it was developed, but now you need to have a pipeline that will maybe in certain increments, frequently retrain it, in an ongoing fashion retrain it. And then we've got model validation and testing, continuous integration and deployment, monitoring of the model once it's out, and then understanding at which point the model should be retrained. There is something called model drift as well that happens. A lot of people may not be familiar with it. So you might create a model, works great now. In 2 months, suddenly it doesn't work so well anymore. So understanding that and preparing for it is really important. So all in all, MLOps is sort of a systematic deployment of AI, machine learning, and maintenance. It includes reliability and scaling, which I already mentioned. It includes also management of the infrastructure. So nowadays, a lot of the big cloud providers will have infrastructure, but it's not just like you hit a button. AWS has a lot of infrastructure created for deploying machine learning and AI. GCP has a lot of infrastructure, but you still need to understand how to utilize that infrastructure, and somebody needs to run it and maintain it. Like the whole idea of MLOps and AI ops is kind of understand that these are different types of skill sets, and to separate responsibilities when you're tackling projects, to have the data scientists do their thing, and then it's handed over to the MLOps people that then take the solution and operationalize it and make sure it runs reliably and it's monitored and all of that is taken care of. So I put this in here as a challenge because I think a lot of organizations underestimate the importance of this. And if you look at the statistics, very small fraction of models make it into production. And this, is really plays a really important part of that in that. So can we move on to the next slide? Now, MLOps is a bit more sort of technical side. Now we're going to get more to sort of the departmental issues, and and we're looking at sales and marketing specifically. One big challenge is a lack of data consistency and quality. So you've got frequently siloed data that's fragmented across departments. You may have data that's not usable for AI due to and machine learning due to poor quality, or the data itself may be incomplete or non-standardized. It's like you might have data represented in one way from one department or one system, and the same data is represented in another way in another department. And a lot of the times, like you come across settings where you can't even relate them. Like there's no way to relate the customer in one system to the customer in the other system. So a lot of that is due to missing data governance within an organization. So to address this type of an issue, you want to make sure you have a robust data strategy and you execute upon it. So you want to have a single source of truth across departments if multiple departments are involved. Preferably, this would be accomplished through some form of master data management. So it's very natural for organizations to have many systems. It's not practical to assume that you'll just get them on the same system. You just want to make sure that if we're looking for a customer, the data is not necessarily it's not inconsistent across systems. And so you want to manage that. And that's really kind of what master data management tries to do, is it tries to manage that, rather kind of accepting the fact that we just have a sea of different systems, and that's the nature of most enterprises. And so for analytics and data science purposes, a lot of the times this sort of consolidation may involve creating a data warehouse or a knowledge graph, which we briefly mentioned, which would be, if you do have multiple systems, we bring it all in one place for analytics purposes, which then allows you to do all your downstream tasks. And obviously, the other thing that's really important is have a data governance framework and quality control mechanisms for how is data entered, and make sure that it's of good quality. So that's the first one. Well, the second one. Could we move on to the next slide? So we have in here a lack of communication, or one before. Yeah, so we call this lack of communication, but it's really kind of a misalignment between sales and marketing. Now, we've been in a lot of organizations where sales doesn't necessarily appreciate the value of marketing, and it's not quite clear within the organization what value marketing is bringing some of the organizations. And part of the problem is, it's marketing does something and then they don't have visibility in what's happening down the road. Like, how is that affecting sales? How is that affecting revenue? And so that's creating issues. And so, yeah, one issue here is just in understanding how does one affect the other. How is marketing affecting sales? It's understanding the return on investment for marketing. But then it can also be misaligned goals of marketing and sales. Like, marketing is trying strategically to accomplish one thing and sales is pushing in another direction. That can be problematic as well from an AI and machine learning standpoint. So to address this, you want to promote cross-team alignment and communication. preferably you would want to have some ability to track the customer journey as they're going through these departments. And that's part of the reason why we were emphasizing knowledge graphs, because that journey, that allows you to do that in a systematic fashion. So now if the question is, how is marketing affecting sales? You got it in there, and you have a systematic way to start answering some of those questions. It doesn't necessarily have to be a knowledge graph, but you have to somehow connect the dots. And then lastly, if AI is being deployed in sales or marketing and insights are being generated, it's helpful to share those insights across departments. So can we move on to the next slide? All right, so here we have a lack of unified AI strategy across go-to-market teams. Now, these guys might communicate. It's just that they might be doing their own thing. They realize AI machine learning is useful. So you got people, kind of each one of these teams, and go-to-market teams are kind of more encompassing. And it's just not marketing or sales. It's more than that. But the issue here is across these go-to-market teams, you might have duplicate efforts, fragmented solutions with inconsistent metrics as to what constitutes success, and then obviously wasted resources. And again, here it makes sense to promote cross-team alignment and communication across these go-to-market teams. And you also would want to have some kind of a centralized AI governance or steering committee to manage AI initiatives at a more strategic level across the organization, so that we say, okay, this is what we want to accomplish, and so make sure that these teams are kind of in sync as to what they're, what they're trying to execute on. And then once they are in sync, you may realize that there's some shared needs across these go-to-market teams, and that's actually an opportunity, because then you can think about developing reusable capabilities to minimize the duplication across these teams and the wasted efforts. And we could switch to the last one. So we got lack of willingness to adopt and change. So it's basically resistance to change when you're trying to deploy AI and machine learning. This could be because people are afraid for their jobs. It could be because people are afraid that AI is taking over human decision making and ways that may not be responsible or are not appropriate. It could be just a resistance due to a lack of understanding of what this is. So to address these challenges, it's helpful to educate people internally on AI and machine learning. You may want to use real-world AI applications that impact employees directly, and show that AI, showcase AI as a tool that enhances the employees' abilities rather than is being used to replace them. So that's kind of a summary of the various challenges that we have come across in dealing with, specifically deploying AI and machine learning to sales and marketing.
Awesome. Thanks, Rudy. So in terms of kind of the last couple slides we have here are really a wrap up of how we see you guys being able to accelerate your AI machine learning growth, and really kind of how we can help from an AGI perspective build momentum. But there's 4 kind of key recommended next steps in terms of accelerating your growth. One is really looking and evaluating the current state of how you target opportunity and accounts, how you're optimizing marketing for both expansion and your acquisition motions. The second is clearly prioritizing areas of improvement. You want to be better with cross-selling, targeting, churn reduction. How do we leverage machine learning and AI to really drive that? And then 3rd and 4 is really kind of creating that project plan and approach. So getting all of this down on paper, coming up with a plan, coming up with a timeline, assigning data, as well as owners of the whole process, so people start to become accountable to create better outputs within the organization. And that's really critical, is starting to assign accountability to kind of drive those key outcomes. And then as you kind of think about this from an AGI perspective, obviously we're always here to help, and there are various ways that we can do this from a project perspective, whether it's, wrapped into a kind of a broader go-to-market diagnostic or revenue growth blueprint. We also do targeted projects around AI roadmaps, commercial AI roadmaps of how AI can help from an automation capability standpoint drive growth in the future. And finally, looking at kind of AI generated machine learning models. So similar to the areas that Lucas and Kevin were talking about earlier around targeting models, targeting matrix, opportunity models, segmentation, but really kind of leveraging data and machine learning to kind of drive better outcomes from your sales and marketing standpoint. So really, that's all we have today. We really appreciate the time that everyone's put in listening, and we hope to talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.